Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We also have Valerie Steele, who is the director of the museum at FIT, dear friend of the Casa and of this series in particular. And welcome to all of you. As you know, this evening is special because we present Grazia's latest book that she wrote with Sara Martin, and we send our greetings to Sara, who was here with us a few months ago to present her own book on film costumes. And we continue a sort of exploration of these topic with Grazia. 2 words about Grazia. You know, she's a host of her own series here at the Casa, very successful, addressing style. And she's also the protagonist of our video series, Italian Fashion from A to Z, according to Grazia D'Annunzio.
Thank you.
Do watch it. And it's not what you expect. Of course, there is Armani, but it's not under the A, right?
No, A stands for Armani. But for instance, I would say F, you have to, write about Ferragamo, Fendi, and Ferré. So I have to switch the adjective. So it's a very idiosyncratic alphabet. And the letters of the alphabet correspond to an adjective that is linked to a fashion designer.
So take a look.
Anyway, take a look and you will understand. Because I have, for instance, the letter W. And so W, you don't have in Italy any designers under a W. So
and a few last names in general.
Exactly. So I came up with the idea that the 5 W's of fashion. So where, when, why, and whatever, happened in Italian fashion in the 50s. So watch it. It's on YouTube, and the episodes are not that long. I mean, it's between 3-4 minutes up to 20 minutes. So it's not going to take that long.
Italian Fashion from A to Z. Grazia, as you know, was the bureau chief of Vogue Italian here in New York for many years, and that's how most of us got to know her. And now she's teaching fashion journalism at the University of Milan Statale. And she's actually leaving New York in a couple of days to go and continue teaching there. So her career was between professional journalism in the field of fashion and now teaching and passing on her experience to students.
And give back to, the young generation what I learned in this, in those wonderful, wonderful 40 years in Condé Nast that they are still in my heart.
And we're going to talk a bit about that.
Yes, later.
But tonight we're presenting this book. As I said, it's a book. The title is in Italian, Ciak si sfila. Ciak is the Ciak, and si sfila one. Come si dice?
It's it's a pun. In Italian, is you can get it immediately. In English, of course, not. And it's like to say light, camera, and then action. And in this case, is light, camera, catwalk.
So it's catwalks, fashion shows in 30 films. American films and Italian films. So
Mostly American.
So the first question, Grazia, is how did you get the idea to write a book about fashion shows in cinema, you and Sara?
Well, you know what? When I first met Sara, by the way, thank to you, Stefano, because he is responsible for this great connection, and which actually turned into a very, very deep friendship. We soon discovered that we share the same passion for fashion and movies because we both have written quite extensively on these topics. So after, few talks, we decided to investigate something that always fascinated us and was never studied before, namely the fictional fashion shows in movies. So they are not real fashion shows. They are fashion shows that costume designers put together. And is something that happened in Hollywood in the, I would say, mid-late 20s. It also appears also in our most recent production, and we will see an example later.
What is the function of a fashion show in a movie normally? What is it?
Well, no, it depends. I would like to start from the very, very beginning. Fashion, in Hollywood during the 20s and late 20s during the Depression in the 30s, movies were an escape to reality. So adding a fashion show in a musical or in a romantic comedy helped to entertain the audience even more, transporting it into a magical glamorous and unique universe. And also, the fashion show in the movie had the function of showcasing the latest fashion trends. And since back then, Paris was the only capital of fashion, French fashion was the ultimate goal. And for, looking, for instance, at creation of Schiaparelli, Chanel, or Vionnet for the point of a fashion for the costume designers or for the female moviegoers was a must. And last but not least, also we have to consider also what I can say an economical implication. In the 30s, the studios tried to promote the work of their designers on a larger scale, and also they wanted to capitalize on it. And in 1930s, for instance, the Modern Merchandising Bureau was established with the purpose of replicate affordable outfit. I'm sorry, I have to drink because otherwise I cannot continue. Affordable outfits that some actresses wore in the movies, and this is basically how it worked. The studios and their costume designers provided, during a film production, providing to the Bureau the sketches of some outfits. And the Bureau copied all the outfits, put them into the production, and in order to have them ready to be sold in the major department stores all over the US, just in time with the picture release. So Macy's, for instance, was the first department store that had a fashion cinema corner, which was an exclusive boutique for women, middle-class women, who could afford to spend $30-50 for an outfit inspired by fashion in film. And in doing so, being glamorous, trendy in real time, like the actresses on the screen. And this marketing strategy turned out to be extremely successful. And the subliminal message was that Hollywood, and not the couture houses, had the power to tell American women what to wear.
Grazie. Give us an example, a practical example. I know that you prepare beautiful visual for us today.
Okay.
How would we start to show?
Okay. And now we're going to start.
Foundational.
Yes. One of the first movie who highlighted French fashion, French trends, was Roberta. Roberta is a movie from 1935, directed by William Sider, with an incredible, he was based on a Broadway musical who was a big hit, Gauss by Roberta, and has a very interesting and beautiful score by Jerome Kern. And you probably remember the song, Smoke Gets Into Your Eyes? Mm-hmm. Yes? This is the major hit. And the cast was stellar, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, Irene Dunne. The plot is convoluted, like everything that happened, especially in romantic comedy back in the 30s, but I'm going to, sum up with you briefly. It's about a football player, American football player, who comes to Paris with his best friend, and suddenly he inherited a fashion house, a couture salon, from his aunt. Of course, the guy didn't know anything. He's totally clueless about fashion. But he wants to keep on the business, to continue the business, to keep on the business. And finally, a noble woman who happened to be the aunt's right arm will help him in, running the couture house. She's going to put a wonderful fashion show all together, and it's going to be a great success at the end. The fashion show is a great success, and the two of them will be together and happy and live happily ever after. So Now, I want to show you finally a short clip, and I would like you to also notice how the camera sometimes slowly zoom in on clothes. For, of course, the pleasure and the happiness of the female moviegoers, but also for a commercial agenda. See? And also check the pose. They are like little dolls. Okay. First of all, we have to, recognize the wonderful work of Bernard Newman. Bernard Newman was a long forgotten designer, costume designer, who actually made his Hollywood debut with this movie. And Bernard Newman was not trained as a costume designer originally. He was a couture designer who worked in New York at the department stores Bergdorf Goodman. And and his creation were praised by magazines such as Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. And he became well known for his penchant for French fashion and his refined, understated elegance. And so it was the perfect choice for a movie like Roberta that takes place in a Parisian couture house. And the legend also says that it was his loyal client, Irene Dunn, who is in the movie, and she plays the couturier, who suggested his name to RKO, which was the big film production company. And the RKO immediately hired him with the astronomical budget of $250,000, just for the costumes that play important major role in the movie. And Newman describing working with Roberta as a thrill of a lifetime. And the outfits that we can see a couple of them here exemplify at the very best what was trendy in fashion. And the evening gowns, especially, and some hats were sold successfully in the department stores. And investing on costumes really paid back because Newman became the chief costume designer at RKO, and he worked especially with Ginger Rogers. And for her, he designed those beautiful bias-cut satin and chiffon dresses that really enhance her dancing numbers and her pirouettes.
Grazia, and you said that Bernard Newman was not he was very famous in his time, Then
Yeah,
sort of neglected.
yes, absolutely neglected
People
now.
will go to Macy's and find pieces inspired by him and associate them with Paris, but they were designed by an American,
Yes.
produced in America.
Yes,
So it's
correct.
also very pro-American commerce, pro-American business.
Sure.
But of this age, the golden age of Hollywood, they said he was forgotten. Who was the king of all the costume designers, or your favorite at least?
Huh. Of course, only one big name, Adrian. Adrian Adolf Greenberg, known simply as Adrian. Adrian never won an Academy Award, strangely enough, because the Academy recognized the importance of the costume design only in 1949. So quite late, and back then Adrian was already, out from Hollywood. Adrian was the chief designer of MGM from the late 20s up to the early 40s, and he worked on more than 200 movies, and probably the most famous one is The Wizard of Oz. And now you know who designed Dorothy Ruby sequin slippers. And Adrian also, his creations were credited as gowns by Adrian, not as costume, because Adrian elevated the costume design into a glamorous status. And he created high, fashion dresses which boasted precious fabric, elaborate drapery, exquisite embroidery, and an impeccable cut. And Adrian was extremely influential on fashion, American fashion taste. And he is responsible for, let's say, the makeover of many, many stars. For instance, Greta Garbo's androgynous look, Katharine Hepburn, sporty chic look, the Norma Shearer, alluring flair, and most of all, he was the image maker of Joan Crawford. And Joan Crawford was perceived back then as we could call her now, a proto-influencer. She was extremely she was a real fashion icon. And in fact, she said that if I'm copied, it's because of my clothes. And Adrian designed everything. And in fact, our hero concealed the least perfect aspect of Crawford's body and created for her the silhouette she's very well known for, which is a suit with a very, very fitted jacket and the big shoulder pad and a narrow skirt. But the biggest hit that Adrian created for Crawford is this dress. And this dress was worn by the star in Letty Lighton, and which is a movie of 1932. And the dress, when the movie came out, became the dress of the season. And Macy's, in few days, sold like 500,000 copies of it. And Adrian worked with Crawford on many movies, such as The Women, which includes a fashion show. And you probably remember briefly, I'm going to tell you briefly the plot of this very, very smart comedy, which is based on a play by Claire Bootloose and was directed by George Cukor in 1939. And it tells the story of a group of friends, very wealthy New York women, whose life and relationship are poisoned by rivalry, gossip, a lot of gossip, and betrayals. And here is the show, which is a kind of long one. So I really would like you to sit down, relax, fasten your seatbelt, and enjoy this, fashion ride. And also check the accent of the mademoiselle who's going to present the show. She speaks with a very heavy French accent, just to underline the fact that we are in a French salon, even if, of course, the scene takes place in New York. Have fun. Okay, this scene that is incredibly long for a movie that is less than 2 hours, is just 6 minutes long, was shot first of all in Technicolor, which was it was a big novelty at the time because it was a new process, and the movie, and that the beginning of the movie and the entire movie is in black and white, so that was a huge surprise for the audience, and it is considered by far Adrian's masterpiece, and it presents a cornucopia of sportswear, beachwear that were very, very, very fashionable, especially in the 30s and the 40s, and plus day wear and evening wear worn by 35 models. They were professional models that they were, flew in to Los Angeles from New York. And originally, George Cukor, who's the director, didn't want to, was kind of reluctant to put this scene into the movie because for him it was too long and it didn't fit perfectly into the plot. But of course, it was at the end added in because it was conceived mostly for marketing purposes. And here, Adrian pays homage to, of course, French couture, but especially to the surrealistic genius of Elsa Schiaparelli. And for instance, here you have the hand-shaped clasp holding a rose that is very surreal, and also the gloves sporting a doorknobs, and the bucket plastic hat. And Schiaparelli was, for instance, the first designer who used plastic cellophane for her creation, for her outfits, and also the red and white dress that has, big shoulder pads. And for Adrian, this was a commercial triumph because the movie was successful, but the outfits that were sold in the department stores were really the sales went really, really well. And Adrian left MGM in 1941, and he opened eventually a salon de couture in Beverly Hills, and he was quite happy until one day he decided to return to Hollywood just for a very, very teeny tiny project. And that was the idea of a fashion show for the movie Lovely to Look At. Lovely to Look At is a 1952 Melvin Leroy musical that is a loosely baked remake of Roberta, which is the first one that we have seen. And actually, to be precise, the fashion show that I'm going to show you some clips was directed by Vincent Minnelli. So the movie is by Melvin Leroy, but it was Vincent Minnelli who shot this teeny tiny segment which sees the Adrians come back to Hollywood. So enjoy it. Okay. And now a couple of things, because you know what, this is lovely to look at, cannot be compared in terms of success to the original movie, to Roberta. But this fashion show, which is Adrian's last hurrah, was a real a testimony of his versatility and his talent, because he's delivering here a wonderful cornucopia of early 50 styles, clearly inspired by Balenciaga, Dior, and other big names of that period. And a couple of remarks about the set design. First of all, as you can see, we are not inside a couture house, but we are outside in the courtyard, which is, and we are in Paris, of course, which is, lit by these gigantic chandeliers. And the second surprising touch is that we have a group of pages and ballerinas wearing Venetian mask and hats that who moves around sometimes this ivy-covered obelisk and play with chiffon veils while the models are showing the outfits. And this eye-catching scene is an example of the visionary talent of Adrian's good friend Tony Duquette. And Tony Duquette was a truly Renaissance man who worked in Los Angeles in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And he was a jeweler designer, a set designer, an interior decorator. And he was a prophet of maximalism. These are the scene of the fashion show that we just watched. And this is, one of Tony's example. And this is another picture also of his jewelry. And Tony's motto was more is more. And of course, and this is also the title of a big book that, was published on him, on his aesthetic. And his aesthetic is a sparkling cocktail of 18th century Venice, Oriental touches, and Baroque influences. And Tony was Adrian's partner in crime, not only in this movie, but also he designed his boutique in Beverly Hills. And also the two of them work on the costumes of the musical Camelot, which opened on Broadway in the 60s with Julie Andrews and Richard Burton, for which they won a Tony Award.
Grazia, you gave us examples of these custom designers that end up becoming couturier of some sort, because their yes. models become produced industrially for general people. When do we start having examples of the other way around, of a couturier working for the movies, a fashion designer doing costumes for the movies?
Okay, I would say that the first one is Hubert de Givenchy. Hubert de Givenchy, famous, French couturier, who mainly worked with Audrey Hepburn. And for instance, one of the movies that he worked with, for her was Funny Face. Funny Face is a lovely musical comedy directed by Stanley Donen in 1957, and is a story of this very shy and frumpy bookstore employee who's in love with French existentialism and couldn't care less about fashion, until one day a photographer, who is played by Fred Astaire, and the brassy editor of a magazine, a fashion magazine, Quality Magazine, played by Kate Thompson, decided that she could be the new face of the special issue of Quality Magazine. And so they convinced her, maybe better say they forced her to come to Paris and star in a fashion show, special fashion show, and in a special shooting. And of course, I would like to show you a clip of the rehearsal of this fashion show, where thanks to the magic power of a dress, our shy bookworm is totally transformed in an enchanting bird of paradise.
Lights! Curtain!
So Givenchy not only designed for Hepburn this regal dress with this, top, pink top and a long trail, but also all the outfits that Hepburn wears in the Paris scene. And we have other examples of Givenchy impeccable style during the fashion show here and the shooting in Paris. And Funny Face is the, I would say, the only, the first time in which Givenchy, for which Givenchy was acknowledged and given and special on-screen credits, even though he had previously worked with Hepburn in Sabrina. They actually met in 1953 when Audrey was almost unknown because Roman Holidays was not out yet. And she was working on this character, Sabrina, which is a girl, as we know, that comes back home after 2 years in Paris, totally transformed. So she was looking for, designers who could inspire her character, and she heard about this genius, this prodigy that just left, who just left the Balenciaga couture house and opened his own practice. So she was in Paris, she called for an appointment, and when they met, Givenchy was in for a big surprise because he was expected to meet Katharine Hepburn, not Audrey Hepburn. And of course, he told her that he didn't have time to work on this for this film, but he gave her some outfits, these 3 outfits that you probably remember from Sabrina. And when Hepburn got back to Hollywood, that was the big problem because she had to talk to the very powerful, legendary costume designer of this movie, who was Edith Head. And Edith Head was not happy at all with this idea. She accepted the clothes, but of course, she was not amused, and she had no intention of sharing the credit with a couturier, French couturier, who was, on top of everything, among her sources of inspiration. So, consequently, when she finally got an Oscar for the costume of Sabrina, she was really bitchy. She deliberately omitted naming Givenchy. And, of course, Hepburn was incensed. And from that moment on, she insisted of having Givenchy creating for her special costumes. And, of course, after Sabrina, we have Funny Face, and of course, he got finally the credits, and also this movie, Breakfast at Tiffany, and this black dress became an instant sensation and is still iconic in these days. And last but not least, the working relationship between Givenchy and Hepburn turned into a very strong, lifelong friendship. And for instance, Audrey once said that the Givenchy clothes are the only ones I feel myself in. He's more than a designer, he is a creator of personality.
Grazia, it seems that in all these films from the 30s to the 50s, fashion is taken very seriously. There is
Yes.
little or no irony at all, even when they present the fashion shows.
No.
When do we have to wait to see a more desecrating, ironic, or satirical depiction of fashion?
Well, definitely in the 60s, because it's the time generally speaking, of dramatic change and great upheaval. And I would say that a very good example is of this time is an outrageous rule breaker. And although he's not very well known, he had developed a cult following up to these days. And I'm talking about Qui êtes-vous, Polly Magoo? Who Are You, Polly Magoo? Which is a 1966 black and white mockumentary, is a fake documentary, directed by a truly fashion insider, the photographer William Klein. And the plot is very, very thin. It's about an American model in Paris exploring the couture world and being interviewed by a French TV program. But the crux of the film is a very crude satire of the fashion world. It's the very first example. And exposing the hypocrisy and the silliness of the so-called movers and shakers, as well as the designers and their entourage. And there is, for instance, a character modeled on Diana Vreeland, who was back then the very powerful editor of American Vogue. I'm thinking of my editor. Mm-hmm. And also a cameo appearance of the great photographer, Richard Avedon, and also real models of that time, like Dorothy McGowan, who's this girl who plays the titular role and was William Klein's favorite model, and Donnay Luna, who was the first American black superstar, are also in the movie. And now it's time to show you a clip of Polly Magoo, and actually is the opening scene of the movie, which is a fashion show, which sets the tone of the absurdity of the entire film. And be prepared.
Ah, voilà, Miss Maxwell, quelle punaise. C'est laquelle est Bah, c'est la rédactrice en chef, tu l'as vu entrer.
This is the actress who plays Diana Vreeland.
On peut rien comprendre, cette conne. Enfin, ça fait rien. C'est parti. Oui, bon, ça suffit maintenant. C'est pas la peine de serrer tant que ça. Allez, ça va.
Numéro 1. Number 1. Numéro 1.
Ça très bien. Oh, quelle est belle. Oh, ça c'est absolument admirable, évidemment pas commode.
But what can you do?
Oh, c'est étonnant. Oh, c'est beau, ça. Fantastique. Ça, c'est une beauté.
Magnifique.
So the fashion show, this fashion show scene demonstrates quite clearly how fashion world sometimes tends to disregard comfort and practicality in service of the avant-garde. And the most obvious examples are those crazy sculptural metal dresses that are impossible to wear, as one fashionista says, but what can you do? They are magnificent no matter what. And they are likely inspired by the early collection of the French couturier Paco Rabanne, who used to work with metals in his shows for his dresses. And another little thing that I would like to underline is the location. The location is a crazy location. The fashionistas, they try to sit down in very uncomfortable, position on this, benches. And the building, this building is Villa Bloch, a Villa André Bloch, which is outside of Paris and is a brutalist modern, building that was inaugurated, was built in the early 60s. And Polly Magoo is also the first movie who sets the tone for future satire movies of the year, for instance, 2000, like think of Zoolander and Bruno. Though we couldn't have those without Polly Magoo.
Thank you. Now I ask Grazia for a favor. I was dying to show this for me the most iconic fashion show in cinema. That is, of course, the ecclesiastic fashion show in Fellini's Roma. Talking about satire, there you go in that one. You have both the satire of the fashion world, because it takes a perfectly staged fashion show with the announcer, with the catwalk, and at the same time, it's a satire of the Catholic Church that just underwent. Maybe we can start rolling it. I'm going to speak on the clip. The Church just finished, completed the process of the Second Vatican Council that sort of simplified the garments, the priestly garments, the vestments, sort of brought a sense of more stylish simplicity. And here the Princess Domitilla, who is based on a real princess, Roman Princess Borghese, who did not accept those changes, this simplification, and she convenes a fashion show in her palace that in real life is in Piazza Navona, just facing the fountain. And of course the guest of honor is Il Cardinale, the Cardinal. And then the fashion show begins from the lowest ranks of the church. So you have the novices dressed in black, and it proceeds in a sort of fantasy or delirium, if you wish, of creations. Rome is a film from 1972. It's the second film in which Fellini collaborates with Danilo Donati, a great costume designer who despised reality, and he said it very clearly. I'm not here to reproduce reality. Reality is for I pedanti, for bookish people. I'm here to take from reality what I like and to transform it into something else. So in the ecclesiastic fashion show, you have a perfect example of this.
1972.
1972. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Actually, it opened the Heavenly Bodies, the exhibition that was a blockbuster that analyzed the relationship between fashion shows, contemporary fashion and Catholic imagination and ecclesiastic, garbs.
And if you read some critics, what they say it's Fellini criticizing the church excesses. Fellini was fascinated by these excesses. He liked them. He indulges in them. And like the princess, he somehow is missing it. And now we are going to make Pelle happy. Let's raise the volume, and I'm going to shut up for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to continue.
E il mondo che deve seguire la Chiesa, non il contrario.
Passiamo ai modelli sportivi. Au paradis, toujours plus vite. Ecco il modello numero 6. Variazioni sacristanesche per cerimonie di prima classe.
The film is also an homage of Fellini to Rome. He was a country boy. He came from Rimini, a coastal town on the Adriatic Sea, and he arrived in Rome with the open eyes of somebody that is discovering new things. And Rome is one of the few places where you have the shops where they sell ecclesiastic garments in the street along with the other ones. So you can see the papal garments, the papal vestments before they're brought over. And Fellini was fascinated by that. And it's a crescendo of madness on some level, and the materials are very interesting. There is all sort of stuff from metals to neon lights and much more. And as you see, the cardinal has sunglasses, you don't see his eyes, and in these cases you have only the shell without the content. There are bishop, pope and a mitre, but there is no bishop inside. It's only the dress that remains. Beyond. The neon lights, and I think we can stop here.
Okay. And I was mentioned to you before Heavenly Bodies, which is the a blockbuster exhibition that in 2018 really analyzed the relationship between contemporary fashion and ecclesiastic, and Catholic imagination, and the fascination that fashion world always had towards these, garments, the ecclesiastic garments. And I would like to show you, for instance, a couple of pictures from that exhibition. This is a Dior by Galliano papal dress, and these are more, somber nun's look, and the first one on the right is by Tom Brown, and actually is, reminds you the head of the nuns that we just seen in Roma. And another little thing that is that Fellini interest in religious robes it didn't start with Rome, but it started a little way back in 1960 when he did La Dolce Vita. And he asked, for instance, the famous costume designer Gherardi, who won an Academy Award for the costume of this movie, to create for Anita Ekberg this clerical dress, which was, of course, inspired by the Pretino dress that Le Fontana sisters, very famous couturier in Rome during the Hollywood on Tiber period of the 60s, early 50s, early 60s, did for their loyal clients, Ava Gardner.
Grazie. Talking about satire in the representation of the fashion world, we come much closer to us, and we cannot not talk about The Devil Wears Prada. So it's a world that you know pretty well from the inside.
Well, yes.
So what was your reaction when you saw it, and what did you
Well,
think?
no, actually, I like it, and I have to tell you, I identify myself a lot with with Anna Hathaway character, Andy, the assistant of the Beachy Miranda, who is played by Mary Streep. And because when I met, for instance, my big boss, Franca, I was wearing a similar, felted sweater, but luckily she never say anything to me, and thank God she hired me regardless of the way I was dressed. No, actually, I like The Devils Wear Prada, and I actually like the scene that I want to show you, which is the scene that shows the fashion. I would like to show you the picture, a clip of the Insider Paris destination and the fashion show that is, of course, the acme of the week that Andy and Miranda are enjoying in Paris.
How are you? So glad to see you. Thank you for coming. You like the collection?
Absolutely.
This is very important. Very, very important.
This is my new Emily.
Hello, how do you do? Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
You love the show?
So you, for sure, you have noticed a real life fashion insider who's sitting on the front row, who's Giancarlo Giametti, is Valentino's right arm. And also Valentino himself is the star of this fictionalized fashion shows, which was shot in New York, although it meant to be in Paris. And we know that Valentino was absolutely in heaven to play this cameo role, also because he wanted to interact. I mean, he wanted to have a scene with Mary Streep, who's an actress whom he admires a lot. And also for her, he designed this special dress that she wears in another scene back in New York when she hosts the party at the Museum of Natural History. Of course, I mean, you know that Mary Streep was brilliantly cast. She plays again characters, and she plays the role of Miranda Presley, a very bitchy, nasty editor of the Runaway magazine, and you know who was the real inspiration for it. Okay, and I'm sorry. She's still there, and even more powerful than ever. And a special mention also goes to the talented Patricia Field, who is the costume designer of this movie. And Patricia started her career in downtown New York in the 80s in a funky boutique, which started to be, it was immediately the magnet of a fashion and artist dash music crowd. For instance, Jean-Michel Basquiat was a customer, and Madonna as well. So in this case, for The Devils Wear Prada, Patricia raided the archive of some fashion houses, because she was the first who brought fashion into costume, real fashion into costume design. And for Miranda, on the right, she put together a mix and match of Prada, for instance, like this outfit that she wears on the right, Donna Karan a lot, and also Fendi. While for for Andy, she decided to make it into a kind of Chanel girl. And what is unique about Patricia Field's vision is that her style was not dictated by current trends and was very free and original. But the items that said that the items that she chose for this movie, and especially the TV serial Sex and the City, created a real demand for accessories like the Fendi baguette bag, the Manolo Blahnik pumps, or the double C Chanel necklace. And that's it.
Grazia, how are you going to close this story? Are there still movies that feature fashion shows? Is there one in particular that close to us that you would like to?
Yeah, I would like to mention briefly Phantom Thread, who was a beautiful, picture with where the character is an English fashion designer, and he's loosely based on Charles James and Balenciaga, and has also a wonderful fashion show. And definitely, Mrs. Harry Goes to Paris. Mrs. Harry Goes to Paris is a very recent movie, came out a couple of years ago, and he's based on the novella by Paul Gallico, who was a bestseller, and it was published in 1958. And it's a story of a very sweet but also fearless London cleaning lady who all of a sudden falls in love with a Dior dress. And the fantasy unexpected becomes a reality. So our lady takes off to Paris with all her savings and lands in Avenue Montaigne, which is Dior headquarters, during the peak of the season. And disregarding social conventions and also the rigid formality of the fashion house, she manages to sneak into the atelier, watch a defilé, and also finally, choose her dream gown.